Hello students, how are you all? I hope all of you are doing really well. In this class, we are going to study a chapter from your Beehive book, The Snake and the Mirror, written by Vaikom Muhammad Basir. Before you read, students, I want all of you to answer a question. Do you like to look at yourself in the mirror? Yes? Some of you will say yes, and some will also say no. But most of us really like to look ourselves in the mirror. What do you think about at such times? What do you think when you're looking at the mirror? Today, whether I'm looking good or not? Is my hair looking nice and it's totally set? Okay? Whether this dress is looking good on me or not? So there are certain thoughts that comes to our mind when we look ourselves in the mirror, right? Have you ever seen a dog, a cat, or a bird looking into a mirror? What do you think it sees? So what do you think when a cat or a dog or a bird look into the mirror? Well, they might think whether I'm beautiful or not. They might also think whether my feathers are great or not, right? So there are certain things the cat or the dog or the bird might have in their minds when they're looking at the mirror. Now, read this humorous story about a doctor, a snake, and a mirror. So this story is really a funny one, interesting one, which revolves around three important characters, which is number one, a doctor, a snake, and a mirror. Now let's begin this class. Has a snake ever coiled itself round any part of your body? A full-blooded cobra? All of us fell silent. The question came from the homeopath. So the homeopath doctor is asking the question, has a snake ever coiled itself around any part of your body? And not just any snake, students. It's a full-blooded cobra. Now this is really scary question, right? And this is the question which is asked by the doctor of homeopath. And as you can see, I have mentioned the meaning of the word coiled, which means to move or twist into the shape of a coil. As you can see in the picture also, how the snake is sitting in a coiled position. That is, right, that is the position of coiled. Okay, let's continue. The topic came up when we were discussing snakes. We listened attentively as the doctor continued with his tale. So generally what happens when we're discussing about certain thing, a new topic pops up. We start to discuss about different things, right? So here the topic of discussion was snakes. And that's when the question has come. And all of these people, they are listening very attentively to the doctor as the doctor is continuing his tale or he's telling the story. It was a hot summer night, about 10 o'clock. I had my meal and at the restaurant and returned to my room. I heard a noise from above as I opened the door. The sound was a familiar one. Now the doctor is telling the story, narrating the story, that it was a really hot summer night. And what time was it? It was 10 o'clock. He had taken his meal at the restaurant and he returned to his room. And when he returned to his room, he heard a noise which was coming from his room. And that sound was a familiar sound. Familiar means something which you have listened to before. Okay, it was not a new sound, It was a known sound. It was a familiar sound. Okay. One could say that the rats and I shared the room. I took out my box of matches and lighted the kerosene lamp on the table. So now the doctor is saying that anybody can say that I and rats shared the room, which means the rats were so much in number in his room that almost he said that it felt like sharing the room with the rats. Then he took out his box of matches and lighted the kerosene lamp. I'm sure students, all of you must have seen the kerosene lamp, right? And for reference, you can see this picture. Okay, this was very common in earlier days when the electricity was not a facility which was given to all of us. Now we are blessed with electricity, right? But previously, when there was not, we did not have the facility of electricity, these kerosene lamps were very handy at those days. The house was not electrified. It was a small rented room. I had just set up medical practice and my earnings were meager. So the doctor is saying that my house did not have electricity. It was not electrified. It was a very small rented room because he had just started earning. Okay, he had just started his medical practice, because of which his earnings were meager. And the word meager means something which lacks in quantity or quality. Okay, so here what was meager? The earnings, okay, the money that he used to earn was very less. I had about 60 rupees in my suitcase, along with some shirts and dhotis. I also possessed one solitary black coat, which I was then wearing. So he is saying that I had 60 rupees in my suitcase. Also, what other things did he had? He had some shirts and dhotis. You can see in the picture also, students, the doctor is wearing a dhoti, right? He also possessed. Possessed means he also owned. Okay, a black coat which was solitary. Solitary means a single black coat he owned, which he was then wearing. I took off my black coat, white shirt and not so white vest and hung them up. I opened the two windows in the room. It was an outer room with one wall facing the open yard. Right? And this picture is a good reference to what is written here. As you can see, there is a black coat, there is a white shirt, and also not so white vest is hung, right? He opened it and he hung them. And he has also opened two windows in the room, and he had the room had only one wall facing the open yard. And you can see the picture here is quite dark, right? Like I mentioned before, the room did not have the electricity. It was dark and he was surviving on that kerosene lamp. It had a tiled roof with long supporting gables that rested on the beam over the wall. There was no ceiling. There was a regular traffic of rats to and from the beam. So here the doctor is describing the situation of his room, that it had a tiled roof with long supporting gables which has rested on the beam over the wall. But there was no ceiling. And like I told you before, the doctor shared his room with rats. So there was a regular traffic of rats to and fro the beam. And the meaning of gables mean here the triangular upper part of a wall. I made my bed and pulled it close to the wall. I lay down, but I could not sleep. I got up and went out to the veranda for a little air. But the wind god seemed to have taken time off. So he had done all the preparation so that he can go and sleep. He has put the bed close to the wall and he lay down, but he was not getting sleep. He was not able to sleep. So what did he do? He got up and he went out to the veranda to get some little air, right? To get some fresh air. But there was no air. And the doctor thought that the wind god has taken leave, has taken time off. So there is no air. I went back into the room and sat down on the chair. I opened the box beneath the table and took out a book, the Materia Medica. So he came back because there was no air in the veranda. So he came back into the room and he sat down on the chair. Then he opened the box which was beneath the table. And from the box, he took out a book. And what was the name of the book that he took out? Yes, very good. Materia Medica. Let's continue. I opened it at the table on which stood the lamp and a large mirror. A small comb lay beside the mirror. One feels tempted to look into a mirror when it is near one. He took out the book, the doctor took out the book and he placed it on the table where also the lamp and a large mirror and the small comb was there. Then he is saying that I feel tempted to look into the mirror because it was near, right? And tempted means to have an urge or inclination to do something, right? So here he was tempted to look into the mirror. I took a look. In those days, I was a great admirer of beauty. And I believed in making myself look handsome. I was unmarried and I was a doctor. So as soon as he was tempted to take a look in the mirror, he said that I was a great admirer of beauty, right? And he believed in making himself look really handsome, right? Many of us also want to, we are admirer of beauty. We also want to look good. We also want to look beautiful. Or boys would like to look handsome. And the doctor was unmarried and he was of course, we know, a doctor. I felt I had to make my presence felt. I picked up the comb and ran it through my hair and adjusted the parting so that it looked straight and neat. Again, I heard that sound from above. So doctor had a very strong feeling that I should make my presence felt. I mean, wherever he goes, people should look at him. People should admire him, right? So he picked up his comb and he ran it through his hair to make the parting look very straight and neat. And then again he heard a sound from above. Remember, I told you that when he entered his house after coming back from restaurant, he heard a sound, a familiar sound. Here again, he heard the same sound. I took a close look at my face in the mirror. I made an important decision. I would shave daily and grow a thin moustache to look more handsome. I was, after all, a bachelor and a doctor. So he's saying that when I was looking at myself in the mirror, I had made a very important decision. And what was that decision? That important decision? That he would shave daily and he would also grow a very thin moustache in order to look more handsome. Why not? After all, he was a bachelor, right? He was unmarried. He was a doctor, right? I looked into the mirror and smiled. It was an attractive smile. I made another earth-shaking decision. So, earth-shaking decision means a decision which has a great importance, right? So, he thought that my smile is really attractive, and then he made an important decision. I would always keep that attractive smile on my face to look more handsome. I was, after all, a bachelor and a doctor too on top of it. Again came that noise from above. So here, the doctor is saying that I really have an attractive smile and I should keep that on my face always to look more handsome. So you see how, the doctor really wanted to look handsome. And to look handsome, he had made two important decisions that day. And why not? After all, he was a bachelor, right? He was a doctor on top of it. He was thinking all this, and then again came that noise which was coming from above. I got up, paced up and down the room. Then another lovely thought struck me. I would marry. I would get married to a woman doctor who had plenty of money and a good medical practice. So doctor was sitting on the chair, do you remember? Right? So he got up from there and he started to pace up and down the room. Then another lovely thought struck him. And what was that? He decided to get married. And he decided to get married to a woman doctor who had lots of money and also a good medical practice. She had to be fat for a valid reason. If I made some silly mistake and needed to run away, she should not be able to run after me and catch me. So now he had another condition to get married, and that was he wanted to get married to a girl who has to be fat. And why she has to be fat? That if sometimes doctor made some silly mistake and if he had to run away, she will not be able to run after him and catch him. So doctor is really funny, right? You can see that. With such thoughts in my mind, I resumed my seat in the chair in front of the table. There were no more sounds from above. So he had these lovely thoughts in his mind and he got back to his chair, his seat, and he had noticed that there were no more sounds coming from above. Okay, there's a new word for you here, resumed, which means to begin again or continue after a pause. Okay. Suddenly, there came a dull thud as if a rubber tube had fallen to the ground. Surely nothing to worry about. So, there was no sound, right? The sound stopped to come. But what happened? There was a dull thud. Okay, this thud means a very heavy sound which is made by an object falling to the ground. And he has compared that sound to a rubber tube which had fallen to the ground. He thinks, surely there is nothing to worry about. I mean, these kind of sounds are very common to him. So he did not think much about it. Even so, I thought I would turn around and take a look. No sooner had I turned than a fat snake wriggled over the back of the chair and landed on my shoulder. My God, as you can see in the picture, how the snake has wriggled over his arm, right? When he had completed his thought that there is nothing to worry about, still there was a thinking in his mind that let me turn and see what that sound was. Okay, he wanted to check what made the sound. So no sooner had he turned, he found there was a fat snake which has wriggled over the back of the chair and landed on his shoulder. Wriggled means, students, to twist and turn with quick movements. Okay? As you can see in this picture, it's really scary that how the snake has wriggled itself over the doctor's shoulder. So I think we should stop here, and the next part of the story we will continue in the next class. Okay. Before ending the class, we will discuss some questions. The first question is, who narrated his encounter with the snake? So I'm just asking you some simple questions just to make sure that you have understood the story well, and you also get to revise whatever we have read till now. Okay. First question is, who narrated the story with the encounter with the snake? Yes, the narrator of the incident was a homeopathic doctor. Very good. Now, next question. Why did the narrator have to light the kerosene lamp on reaching his room? So, you do remember that the doctor came back from having meal at the restaurant, and by the time he came home, he entered his room and he had light the kerosene lamp. So the question is, why did he do so? Okay. The answer is, the narrator had to light the kerosene lamp when he returned from having meal at the restaurant. It was because it was very dark and the room was not electrified. So do you remember, students, I told you that he lived in a very small room which did not have electricity facilities, and that's why he had to make use of kerosene lamp. Okay, let's see the third question. Why was the narrator awake despite the lateness of the hour? The question is very simple, that why the narrator did not sleep even though it was late at night. Let's see the answer. I'm sure all of you know the answer, but let's see it. It was about 10 o'clock on a hot summer night when the narrator reached his room. He made his bed and lay down on it. But he could not sleep due to the heat. He got up and went out the veranda for a little air. But there was no wind. So he went back into the room and sat down on the chair. So students, we all know that the doctor, he went to sleep, right? He made all preparations so that he can go and sleep. But it was so hot in the summer night that he was not getting any sleep. He even went out to the veranda to get some air. But do you remember I told you that the wind god had taken leave? Okay, so there was no air. So because of which he was not able to get any sleep. Let's see the next question. What are the two important and earth-shaking decisions did the doctor take while he was looking into the mirror? Well, this is really an interesting part of the story where he makes two important decisions. In fact, the earth-shaking decisions that he make, right? All of you remember? The first one was, okay, let's see the answer. The doctor was an eligible bachelor. While he was looking into the mirror, he took two important and earth-shaking decisions. He decided that he would shave daily and grow a thin moustache. And the second decision was that he would always keep an attractive smile on his face. And both of these decisions were taken in order to look handsome, right? He wanted to look more handsome. After all, he was a bachelor, and that too a doctor. So that's why these two important decisions were taken by him. Okay, let's see the last question. This is a very important question. Describe the narrator's room. Okay, so I have told you when I was discussing the story that the narrator's room was very small. It was a rented room. Okay, so let's see the answer. The narrator lived in a small, poorly furnished rented room. infested with rats. It was an outer room, its one wall facing the open yard. The room had two windows, and its tiles were supported by gables that rested on the beam over the wall. There was no ceiling. The room was not electrified. Outside the room, there was a veranda. The room was meagerly furnished. Among the few pieces of furniture, there was his bed, a chair, a table with his medical books, usual accessories, and a kerosene lamp and a mirror on it. So these basically sums up the description of his room. Okay, you can just note down the important points here and remember it. Okay, we have discussed some questions and I hope all of you have understood the chapter till here. Was it an interesting one? I'm sure all of you really liked it, and the next chapter we shall continue reading this chapter. We have also learned some new words, students, right? Like gables, wriggled, meager, bachelor. So these are the few words. I wish and I really hope all of you will go and explore on these words, find their synonyms, find their antonyms, and try to make sentences with them. Okay, I'll see you in the next class. Goodbye and take care.